screen is sharing now.
Okay, good. And I want to get to the Moodle site. There we are. This is a bit small, but I, when you're ready, I'm ready to start talking. Is that okay?
Please start. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've done all that we were proposing to do, if you like, on data in this workshop. And so now we're going to start the products. Once you've got the data that you want all checked and ready to go, then you've got to produce lots of products. So the main idea today is that we discuss what we call standard products, which are products that can be done in a fairly standard way that WMO often recommends, and they're done the similar way in different countries, so the results can then be compared, if you like, across countries, as well as being useful for your own country. And that's one sort of product, and Met services have typically concentrated on those products, or many Met services. And then tomorrow, we want to discuss a variety of topics, but including what we call tailored products, where you're not thinking of being standard, you're trying to tailor the product to a particular user. So you're providing, you know, these are supposed to be Met services. So you're providing a service to a specified user who's often paying for that service in some way, and what they want may be different from what another user wants, even if they are ostensibly similar. So we're going to deal with what we call tailored products tomorrow, and then also mention a wide variety of other topics which we don't have time to cover, including how to merge or how to check satellite and reanalysis data with station data, looking at extremes, windroses. There's no end of other things. So that's the idea of the remaining 2 days in the workshop. However, I wanted to remind you all that at least the Ghana DG, who was in consultation with the DG from Gambia, was interested not just in this 1 week workshop, but this being a springboard, so that there's a proposal for work to be done perhaps over a 2-year period, and presented in such a way that your services would be much better at the end of 2 years, and it would demonstrate how much better in a way that funders would be interested in funding you. And so that's quite an ambitious target. And I think it's important that you spend some time considering that and maybe presenting some initial ideas to the DG at the closing. So this is not intended this week as an end, it's intended more as a beginning. And so to stimulate that discussion, I've written something on the Moodle site. And if you get emails from the Moodle site, you would have received it. This depends how you set up your work in Moodle. And if not, you have to go to the Moodle site, and it's in the forum. And so I wanted to go through a few points to start you thinking about the future. And I'm then not expecting us to work on that. I'm expecting just to raise these points. And I think Francis has the idea that there might be a sort of short discussion later this afternoon in groups, and you might then contribute to the Moodle site. There might be another discussion tomorrow before you finish, ready to give your initial plans. So I just wrote down, 7 points to start you off. And I want you to think that when you ask somebody for funds, you've got to make sure you fit in with the donors. They give funds if it makes them happy too. And so my first point is that I hope you noticed with that the UK Met Office is funding Francis and the resource people and me giving you this workshop. And we work very closely with UK Met, and the Ghana DG wrote to invite the 3 participants from Gambia, and I hope you haven't omitted to notice that that happened very quickly, and that the lady in the UK Met, who's called Karen McCourt, was very happy with your request. So that's an interesting and positive sign that she has funded that, and indeed the participants from Gambia are now with you. So as you move forward, you should reflect on that. And separately from that, I know that the UK Met is very concerned with carbon footprints. So I think she's also very happy with the fact that Francis, who's leading your workshop, is from Ghana, and the workshop's in Ghana, and that is sensible. And there's no travel from outside Africa in you having this workshop. There's travel within Africa, which is fine, but the carbon footprint is quite sensible for this workshop. And you've noticed it involves 2 countries. And I think continuing to involve more than 1 country is quite a neat way to help the donors to give you funds. And so you may decide that you want to make a proposal for continued collaboration, or you might have 2 separate proposals after this workshop. So that's my point number 1. Point number 2 is that donors like it when you describe what you're doing as well as what you want them to fund. So donors are used to agencies saying, please fund A, B, C, and D. What they very much like is to say, we are doing A, B, C, and D ourselves. But if you could fund E, F, G, and H, that would add tremendous value to the work we're doing. So actually not waiting for the funds, but explaining what you're doing and then saying what you could add. So one example of this is, for instance, that in Gambia, there is, I think, quite some work to be done on tidying your data and getting it ready. Now, I know that you may want funds to be able to adopt a data management system, be it MCH or Climsoft, but you might be getting adopting the system is not the solution by itself. You've got to have your data tidied. And so you might decide when you go back to Gambia that you're going to put your own resources into making the data tidy. And if that meant that Al-Haji spent more time with the 2 colleagues that he's with and helped on that, I think that would be an excellent piece of collaboration that's already funded by AIMS, because his salary is paid by AIMS. So then you can see you're doing something. And then in addition to that, you want to adopt a data management system because you've realized you need it. I hope you're getting the idea. The next step is that we haven't done as much as we might have done in this workshop, I think for good reasons. I've been very impressed with the way you've been able to adapt what we've done on the 4 stations to more stations yourself. We've never done that on a workshop. So full marks to GMet for setting that up, and to you guys for being able not just to repeat and copy, but adapt it to more stations. And that's meant that you've spent longer, but in a very good cause. It's also meant that we haven't done as much as we wanted with the other types of data, including the data from automatic stations. So work on that is going to happen later. So that's my point number 3. And I don't see that as a problem because you're asking for more things. So many countries, by the way, are now asking for 2 weeks on R-Instat training, where what we're doing now is the first week, and then you do some things to make the second week better. And then there's a second week, which concentrates much more on reviewing where we've got to and then moving into a wide variety of products. So it may be that one of the things you ask for is a second week, a little bit like this week. And again, you decide whether that is for just your two countries or separately for each country, and so on. So my point 4 is that whether you're going to continue to work together. My point 5 is a bit more novel. I noticed that in Ghana, there's not so many stations in the north as there are in the south. But there's a ring of stations in Burkina Faso that are just the other side of the border, going all around the north of Ghana. And also, I noticed that Gambia is quite long and thin, and it's all surrounded by Senegal. And the Senegal director, who's called Ousmane Ndiaye, is a good friend of mine. And I wonder whether you wanted to consider even involving the other countries with a view possibly to collaborating on the data you share in some constructive way. So you started with 2 countries. Do you want to stick with 2? Or would you like some of your work to involve the other countries? And of course, you're crossing the English-French divide, which would be very good. So there's another sort of novelty that you might want to consider. Then I see I've got 4, 5, and then I've gone back to 4 again. So I've got many points here. So on the data side, I do think that ClimSoft and MCH is likely to figure in your proposal for both countries. Ghana is paying money for CLI data and may wish to investigate ClimSoft. And I think Gambia, it's clear that you need to move to keeping your data in the data management system. My thought on that was that rather than getting the ClimSoft people to come in to give a workshop like this, you might be interested to go to Kenya and evaluate, taking some data with you and actually putting the data and checking how it's working on a working version of ClimSoft, taking your data with you, which you're able to do of enough number of different types, and then making your evaluation. And then if you say, gosh, ClimSoft has worked really well, and you spend a week or 2 weeks in Kenya for a small team of maybe 2 people from Ghana and 2 people from Gambia, and you evaluate that. I think, and then if you decide, gosh, we're keen to involve that, then the people would come and pay you a visit in your own country. And again, you would then decide whether they have to go to Gambia and Ghana separately, or whether they come to just one country. And if they're going separately, could they maybe combine Gambia with Senegal? Would the needs be similar? That would be interesting. So the data management is an important area. And on the data, we are going to be discussing how to combine satellite and station data. And I think there's a big area once we do that you may want to discuss in terms of future work, that at the end of 2 years, you really are confident that you can make good use of merged data. Could be an interesting area. Then I have my first point 6 is that I'm not sure what happens in Gambia, but in Ghana, I know there is demand by users up north that not all the skills are just in Accra. And I wonder what your initial views are of R-Instat in relation to your staff who are in the stations in the north. And I should also mention in Kenya, for example, after their new constitution, they actually sent people from the headquarters to be based up in the north so that there were more senior people there. Do you have thoughts about how your service might develop where there's more skills at the individual stations or at some of the stations and not just all centered around? And how does that figure in your proposal? And so that's my point 6. There is an interesting app being developed specifically for ClimSoft, but I'm sure it could work with CLI data, or it could be adapted so that the data entry can be done from a phone in a very efficient way. And then the data automatically goes into ClimSoft. And then I just wanted to remind you that having proposal for what people are going to provide for you is not enough. You must then think at the end of that, what will you deliver, which the donors would like to see delivered? And there's all sorts of things, but I would like you to reflect that at the end of some support, your service will be better. What is it that you will be able to do with your service that you're not doing now? And I hope with some of the products that we're going to discuss in the next 2 days, and with some of the other things in R-Instat, you will see, gosh, if only I had my data and a bit more expertise, just think of the products I could produce about renewable energy, about pollution, about what are the areas that you would particularly like to reinforce. So there was just some initial ideas to seed your discussions of what happens next. And as I've said at the bottom of this message, over to you. So I need to edit the message so the numbering's a bit more sensible. I wrote this very early this morning, but I hope you find that helpful, and it can start a discussion maybe this afternoon or tomorrow, where you take over these ideas and think what could be particularly valuable for your service. Okay, welcome to have comments, but I did just want to share that with you because I won't be around this afternoon. And I thought it was a useful time to open these ideas as we move from data to products. So the end of that little lecture, if you like, and Francis, do you want to discuss, or are there questions before we now move to the products? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, Roger.
Okay, so now I'm moving to the main item, which is the fact that as you're starting with daily data, you usually want many of the products involve climatic summaries. And so here we are with the climatic summaries. And so this is the dialogue we're now going to use. I hope you can see these climatic summaries. The dialogue. Can you see the dialogue?
Yes, Roger, we can.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you annual summaries and annual plus within. And the annual plus within will be monthly summaries, and the annual summaries, as the name implies, is just changing from daily data to yearly data. The big new thing I want to introduce is that your data have missing values, and we need to know how to cope with the missing values. And so I'm going to be spending quite a lot of time on that. And this is a very general dialogue. We're rather pleased with this dialogue, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. So I'm going to start with the annual summaries. I'm in the prepare menu, and what we did before was prepare transform. And now I'm moving down the menu to climatic summaries. So that's where I'm going to be discussing. You can see this menu on the screen, your screens, I hope.
Yes, we can.
And so now I'm going into the climatic summaries, and I'm going to get you annual summaries. So I've ticked here, and I'm then going to get monthly summaries. And I'll do one, and then I'll explain why I think this is a very exciting time to be processing your data. And I'm first going to look at the rainfall. So I'm going to get the rainfall data. And I want to get the summaries. And so I'm going to get these summaries. And I'm going to get the N not missing. And I'm not going to bother with the N total. I'm going to have the total rainfall. I'm also going to get the maximum rainfall. This is the maximum on any day. And it's annual, so it's any day in the year. So I'm going to get those for your 4 stations. So So I'm going to return. I hope you've seen this is quite easy to do. I've got to think which element am I summarizing and what summaries am I getting. There's other things here which we'll come to, but that's quite enough for now. And then I press OK. And you should notice, I've never seen these before, by the way. It's the first time I've used this dialogue. And Axim seems a very, gosh, I didn't realize how rainy Axim was, that in 1950, there's some interesting things about the data. But remember, I now have 311 rows of data. Now, you've always got to ask, what is a column and what is a year? Because we have these rectangles. Remember, I started with these data where a column was an element and a row was a day. And that dialogue produced this data frame where a column is a summary, which is either the count of how many days were non-missing, the maximum, and the sum. So this is the total rainfall for Axim. And this is the maximum on a single day. Quite big in these early years, particularly. And here we go. You notice a few missing values in Axim. And notice in 1995, there were 364 days of data, but it is missing. Because one day was missing. So one day missing implies the summary is missing, because maybe the value of the data that was missing was huge. And as I go on here, I come to Kumasi. And here we have just 243 days, and it's missing. Here there were no days. Here there was 134, but the result is missing. So this is very sensible that you don't have the results when you don't have the full year of data. And in Kumasi, again, the rainfall amounts are rather lower, but they're still well over 1,000. Once I get to Tamale, they're quite often under 1,000. So Tamale in 1969 had every day present. The maximum rainfall on any day was 73.2, and the total rainfall for the year was 960 millimeters. I hope you're clear what we produced and how easy it is to produce it. You don't have to store these anymore. You can always produce them. Okay.
That was a question, Roger. Do you have the? Yeah, there.
I'm ready.
Yeah, he's just fixing it.
Yes, Roger, please. Where we had the NA, just because there was one missing day or some number of days they were missing.
Yeah.
Did you give that option that when a single day is missing, you should not go ahead to find the maximum?
That's a very good question. Yeah.
Because I was wondering why, if one day is missing or some number of days are missing, you couldn't find the maximum of the rest of the day.
Your question is excellent and leads into what I now wish to discuss. Okay. So that's perfect. Namely, this is the option that we've used here, the default option in R, which we therefore are using in R-Instat, is very cautious. This says, if there's a missing value in the year, the result should be missing because we don't know what that value was. Therefore, we don't know what the sum is. So It's very cautious. And you may say, I don't want to be quite so cautious. So that's what I want to come and discuss now. So it's a very good question and leads in to what I want to show you now. And you notice there's quite a lot of missing values, and you may have some views on it. You may be very happy that this is missing because there were 248 days only. So it could have been that the whole rainy season was missing. Whereas here, you might be unhappy it was missing because just a single day. What harm could that do? So you may have views on this. And here is something a little bit intermediary. This is about 6 days missing. Yeah, 6 days missing. Well, 6 days is not very many. What are we going to do? And remember, this is a general rule, and this is for the total. I have to say, WMO says when getting the climate normals, which we're going to come to soon, that in the rainfall, when you have the total, any missing value means the result should be missing. So they agree with this caution for the rainfall totals, but not for temperature means. Whereas currently, we are applying that rule to everything. And I just want you to notice one odd thing, which is the first year of AXIM. And in the first year of AXIM, you may be rather surprised that there were 334 days, so not 365, but I got the value. It wasn't missing. I wonder why. Whereas here, there were 335 days and it's missing. There's something odd that nothing was missing here, it seems, but lots were missing here. So there are one or two things to explain, and you, because this is your partner, Met services are very concerned about quality. And so they spend a lot of time on quality assurance. And I think you have some work to do. Your data for Ghana are really extremely good. Even so, you may be feeling we've got a bit of work to do to improve the quality. I would like you to be similarly concerned about the details of how you cope with missing values so that people understand the summaries that you give, especially to customers where you don't give the daily data, you just give the summary. Otherwise, give the daily data and let them work out the summaries for themselves. So let me continue just a little bit, and then I want to address this issue of missing values. So I'm going to go back to the dialogue. And what I would like is another summary. And then I'm going to address the missing values. So I'm going to get rid of the RR. And I'm going to analyze the rain days. And I'm going to slightly change the summaries. I don't need the N not missing because the rain days were calculated in the same way. So the number of observations is going to be the same as for the rainfall. I don't need the maximum because the maximum is 1. That's the largest value. These values are either 0 or 1. So all I need is the sum. So bear with me, and I think you'll understand it in a minute. And so now I'm going to get the summaries of the rain days, just a single summary. And here it is. So let's take this. In 1951, in AXIM, the days were complete. There was a day, the biggest value was 295 millimeters. The total rainfall was nearly 2,900 millimeters, and there were 148 days were raining. That's quite a lot. That's almost half the days. So if you think 150 days is sort of 5 months. So that's quite a lot of rainy days. Whereas here in this year, it was down to just over 4 months. And here there was less than 4 months of rainy days. So this is less than 1 day in 3, whereas this is considerably more than 1 day in 3. So more than a third of the days are rainy in Axim. That's quite an interesting thing, but less than half. And so here we have the number of rainy days. I would like people to be analyzing counts of rainy days quite a lot. I think it's rather a nice thing. And then if you want to have the rainfall amounts, you can always say how many rainy days and roughly how much rainfall. Here you can see 148 led to this. So it's about 14, 15 millimeters on average per rainy day. If you multiply this by about 15, you're going to get this. So maybe a bit more than 15. So that gives you an idea on average, how much rain do you get on a rainy day? Just divide this by this. So 2,800 divide by that would give you this. Of course, you could do that if you wanted, because you know how to use the calculator. Let's just do that for a minute. I could go to prepare column calculator. And now notice that this is in red, which says that this is not the data frame. I'm on this data frame, and probably I want to move to this data frame now because I want to do this calculation. I want to do the sum of RR divided by the sum of the rain days. And I want to check that's working. Yeah, it seems to be working. And I don't want to call it T mean 2. I want to call it rain per day, something like that. And I don't mind where it goes. I don't have many columns here, so I'll say okay. And so here I see, oh, I was wrong here. It's getting on sometimes nearly 20 millimeters on average per day. So, and I wonder if it's different in some of the other places. As I move from Axim to Kumasi, now I'm down more like 10 millimeters, 12 millimeters per day. And Tamale is sometimes an average of less than 10. This year, there was something rather curious in this year. Oh, this year it was interesting. This year had only 90 observations, and it had the maximum of 28, 151, but it wasn't missing. That's very odd, isn't it? That it wasn't missing. I wonder why it wasn't missing. That's very interesting. You should puzzle about that. How come there weren't any missing values there? And when I have one day missing, so there's something odd to sort out with the missing values. And currently we haven't got it right. We must be careful before we do our summaries. So let's now go back to the dialogue. Oh, not this dialogue. Let's go back to our main dialogue, climatic summaries. So I want to tick this. But I'm not going to bother with this. I'm just ticking this. And then I'm going to do it again. First, I'll do the rainfall. Where are you, rainfall? There's my RR. And I'm going to get the summaries I got before, the N not missing, the maximum, and the sum. So now I've ticked that. I wonder what the difference is going to be. Okay.
I think it overrides the first one.
Oh, yes, here we are. There's the sum RR here now is not missing. And the max RR is here. The sum rain day is still there. I haven't changed that. And the rain per day is still there. But thank you, Francis. It's now overwritten the names. And now, can you see now the columns don't have any missing values? Oh, that's rather different. And even here, the maximum is given here. And here, the sum RR is 0, but the maximum is missing. So that's the opposite extreme. So what have we got here? If I don't tick this, we have the default in R, which is any missing value means the result is missing. If I tick here, I've got the opposite. If there's any missing values, throw them away and do your summaries on the ones that are not missing. So that means that if there were no values, then the sum is 0 even. And so this is very extreme the other way. And these are the two options in R. So you can choose, if you're using R itself, you can choose whether you want to be bold or cautious. Cautious is that any missing value will give the result missing. Bold is that any missing values will use the values that are not missing. That is all that R allows. However, R is the language. Therefore, if it doesn't allow something, you can program it to allow something. And the first package that we have written, which Danny, who you will see this afternoon, has now installed as a proper package, is to add to the options for missing values. So in R-Instat, or with our package in R, you have other options, and they fit in with what WMO allows. So if you're using R-Instat, you have tremendous flexibility on what you can allow. So here you have the maximum number of missing you can allow. So dear GMet and Gambia scientists, would you like a rule of how many missing values you're going to allow for rainfall? And I sometimes allow 27, but I'm not a meteorologist. The reason I choose 27 is that 27 is always less than 1 month. So if a month or more is missing, even if it's February, then I say the results will be missing. So that's one option. And we could try that option. If I return and I say, okay, now you see that all these with 243 are missing. But you should see that 337 is missing just. But where is the 364? There were some with just 1 day missing. $364. Now that's ignoring the fact there's something missing, and it's giving the results. Okay. That's an option. That's an improvement, I think. And you should consider what you're going to use for Ghana. But you still have this puzzle here. I allowed 27 missing. Why did it allow this, which has more than 27? It doesn't recognize the missing. Does anybody think why that is happening, or why might that happen? Why might that be happening? Anybody understand the question? I hope you understand the question. Why could that be happening? And to help you,
there's a guess here. No, not
good.
He's mentioning something about the fact that the rainy days.
I think when we check the number of the rainy days and the annual amount, you find out that it's very significant.
Okay.
It had about 158 thereabout rainy days. And I don't know whether probably that was the reason why it wasn't ignored.
That could be. But now, can you see my screen again now with Axim at the top?
Yes.
Okay. When did you start your data for Axim?
From February.
From 1st of February.
Yeah.
So January wasn't missing, it just wasn't there. So there were all the values in Axim were there from February. Nothing was missing. Aha. And that can happen at the end of the year, if the end of the year isn't December as well. That when you finish, if you don't finish at the end of the year, then it doesn't have missing values, but it doesn't have 365. That's interesting. Could you do anything about that? Well, there's two things you could do. One of them is earlier on, when you went to the dates and you filled the date gaps, you could have had not data limits, but fixed limits. I was hoping data limits, fixed start limit, fixed end limit. How interesting. I thought I could have options, data limit. Oh, here, data limits. When I've got my data limits, we never ticked this. Had we ticked this, it would have added the January to here. It would have ensured the complete years. So it would have started on the 1st of January and made January missing. We didn't do that, which meant we used the data limits, but we didn't ensure the complete years. If we'd ensured the complete years, we'd be okay, but we didn't. So we have to exist with those limits. Now, however, I want to go back to my dialogue, climatic summary, and I want to take my missing. So this option is not quite right for us. I want to have this option, maximum number of non-missing required. Aha, now I could say 365 minus 27 is 338. So I want 338 non-missing. Is another possible option. And remember, we can have more than one option. And WMO wants things. Remember, also, we're going to have to be careful if we get to monthly values that I can't have 338 values in a month. So, because there's only 31 days in a month. So I'm going to set this now. And now I'm going to do it again. Aha, now it's recognized 334 is less than 338, and it's made that missing. That's quite a good option that we have in R-Instat. So if you haven't sorted out the ends and the beginnings of the year in your data, then that's quite a good option for dealing with missing values. And here you can see that at the end of 2020, these are now missing. And at the beginnings of 21, these are all missing. So whether or not it starts on the 1st of January or starts when you have the data, you now need to have 338 non-missing values in the year. That's quite a neat option. I quite like that option. Okay. Are there any questions there so far? We've done quite a lot, actually. We haven't done much in some ways. We've just used our rainfall totals on an annual basis, but we've then done quite a lot in terms of discussing these missing values in detail. Now, I would like to do one more thing before you practice some of these on your own data. But I also want you to explore, remember here, you could change the day range. So for instance, if you wanted to know number of rain days on a 3-month period, which is quite useful for the seasonal forecast, you could change this to be 3 months. That's quite interesting. I've worked in Ghana Met with discussions of the way in which you get the data, and I would quite like you to be using your database each year to get the data. Whereas I have an impression in the past, although you have your data in CLI data, the 3-month data that you use for the seasonal forecast, you keep separately in Excel. You don't need to do that anymore. You can always generate it. And by the way, once you've generated it, you could go to climatic file, export to CPT if you still use CPT. And it would produce, hopefully, your data nicely exported in that funny format that CPT likes. And so you go off to your regional meeting with your data, but your data have the best data come out of the database. You don't have to have a separate Excel file. That's one of the things I'd like you to be considering when you look for further funds. Namely, you must have a through system which is as reliable as possible. Therefore, it immediately always makes use of your database. Okay. I have one more thing I would like to show you before you then practice a bit on your own data. Namely, you've got these summaries. I would now like to prepare a graph of the results. And we're not doing PICSA yet, but the PICSA rainfall graph is quite nice. So I think I'm going to move from the prepare to the PICSA rainfall graph. And in the PICSA rainfall graph, I have the sum of the rainfall. I have the X, which is the year. And I have the, I'm almost ready. The station I'm going to have as facet wrap. So I have results for each of your 4 stations. And I'll have the PICSA options, which have lines here. And I'm going to add a mean line with a label. And I return. And I now say, okay.
Yeah.
Now, you now notice that I don't see any results. And that's because I don't have the output window. The output window is right over here. So I'm going to push this back. I still don't have any results. Where are the results? Here they are. So here are the graphs. Let's put them in our nice graphics window. Oh, I think there's a problem in Kumasi, which we saw in the quality control, which is messing up the graphs a little bit, but you should be all right. So, you know, I'm now paying a price because we didn't do the quality control. But these are rather nice graphs. And they show the mean very nicely for each one. So the mean at I didn't realize Accra has so low rainfall. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's great.
How amazing. Axim has over 2,000 as a mean. Kumasi has 1,400. But remember, there's something funny here. Here's Tamale. Isn't it quite nice to get these graphs? And remember, once you have these graphs, I could change the axes here if I wanted, but let me just stick with this for now. I want to show you one more graph. I'll close this, and I find this quite useful. So I'm going to go back to here, back to my dialogue, and I'm going to go to the data options and define a new filter. And I'm going to. I'm just going to have 2 of the stations, and I'm leaving out Kumasi. And I'm returning. So now I'm analyzing just 2 of the stations. But I'm going to change the pixel options from the mean line to the tercile lines. And we use this to give people an idea of the seasonal forecast in their place. What does it mean? So here we are. The seasonal forecast, if it's above normal, then the seasonal forecast means above 2,200. Below normal is below 1,800. And here you see the same things for Tamale. Above normal has this. So this enables you to interpret above normal, normal, below normal for each station really rather easily. Isn't that fun? So you begin to see, we've started with the daily data, how quick it is to go from the daily data to the annual summaries and to graphs, which could go up on your wall or could go on the wall of the Met service in Tamale. And so he could have a nice series of graphs, and the station in Tamale becomes a place to invite people to look at lots of interesting results using the Tamale and neighboring data. Wouldn't that be nice to enhance your stations so that they become an interesting place for schools to visit and see what the analyses are like? So isn't that easy? Please notice also that, here we are, sorry, I'm here. Please notice also that I think that it's very important to start with the daily data, because now we've seen the problem with Kumasi, we can go back and check the Kumasi data. If you just give people the annual totals, there's nothing they can do. So isn't it nice how quick and easy it is to get these summaries? So I think I would like you to now try these climatic summaries for your station on an annual basis. I think, except that I have to leave fairly soon. So if you don't object, I'd like to get to the monthly basis for a reason I will explain. So I think I was going to stop now and get you doing practical work, but I think I would like to go on a little bit longer, and the practical work will be a bit more, as long as you're not too confused. I would like to get monthly summaries as well, if that's all right.
Yes, Roger, please go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yes, Roger, please.
Okay. So when you practice, I would like you to spend a little time on, maybe I'll show you quickly, on the day range. And so I also, let me go from January the 1st to March the 31st, return. That's quite easy, isn't it? And now I'm doing just the totals for January to March. There's one more thing I must do, of course, because my missing values, I can't have 338 when I've only got 91 days. So the maximum number of non-missing required now, I'll say are 88. I'm not allowing many missing values, but I'll allow 1 or 2 days out of 91. No, a bit less than that, 85. I need 85 days. And that's all I need to do to now change those totals to the 3-month totals. So there I am on the 3-month totals. And then I could go straight to my graphs. Oh, I can't do it there. I go to my PICSA rainfall graph and I say, okay. Now I've got the 3-month totals ready to discuss the implications of the seasonal forecast. That was quite quick, wasn't it? So there is Axim and Tamale, January to March. Now, I'm not saying that's very useful, but you've got the idea of how valuable this can be. And in PICSA, we use this for the station closest to the farmers to say, what does this seasonal forecast mean in terms of the amount of rain you could expect in 3 months? And here you can see it's half as much. A poor year. Of course, remember in Tamale, we're up in the north, and we're not in the rainy season. So I'm slightly surprised how much there is here rather than how little. This is January to March, which is way out of the rainy season in Tamale. This wasn't a good choice of 3 months. But I hope you've got the idea and you've seen how quick it is. Now, there's one slight complication, and that is that these names overwrite. So if you'd wanted the annual total and also the 3-month totals, then after you've got the annual total, change these names. So you know how to change names. You just rename column, right click and rename column. If you want to have, it's usually quite convenient that they overwrite because you can get them all so easily. But if you wanted both, then the first one you still want, you rename the columns. So that is something that you ought to practice doing if you ever want multiple summaries, which otherwise would have the same name. If you're using a different element, that's fine. Okay. So I just want to, I'm coming back to the same dialogue. And without doing it, in your practical, I would like you also to not just do rainfall. I'm going to carry on with rainfall, but I'd like you also to do some temperature summaries. So there's TX and TN. For the temperature summaries, I would suggest that N not missing is useful. These are the minimum and the maximum. These are the extremes of the temperatures. You don't need the sum, but you need the mean. And so, oh, well, let me do it while I'm here. I'll return and I'll get the day range. I'll do it from January the 1st back to December the 31st and return. And now I've added all the temperature summaries. It's as easy as that. So it's a very powerful and easy system that we've spent a long time building it to try and make it as powerful as possible. Remember that I shouldn't really have done it while it was filtered, but never mind. I've now got it. I need to unfilter. So that was a bad idea, but never mind. So I should have unfiltered so I get all the values, but that's fine for the demonstration. Now, the main new thing I want to show you, and it's very little that you have to learn, is I also want to get monthly summaries. And I have a good reason for doing that. So the monthly summaries, I've got to think, what do I mean? This is annual plus within, because we could get monthly summaries, or we could get summaries by 3-month periods, or 10-day periods, or 5-day periods. That's all possible. But often we want the monthly summaries. So I'm going to use the month here. And I'm going to now go back to my rainfall. And now I'll get RR here. And I'll go back to my summaries. My N not missing. I don't need the minimum because the minimum is just 0, unless every day is raining. I don't need the mean, but I do need the sum. Remember, there's lots of other statistics you could get. I'm just taking a few. So I've got my usual statistics and I've got the day range. I won't bother with this. I'll make it a bit extreme now. If there's missing values in the month, then the result is missing. So that is very cautious. So let's see what happens. And so now I'm going to get monthly summaries where I'm not allowing missing values. And I'm going to say, okay. Now I have the same results as before, but notice that these are the daily data. These are the yearly summaries. And these are now the new one that we've just got, which are the monthly summaries. And here we are, starting in February, March, April, etc. Now we have the monthly summaries. This is the largest rainfall, and so on. So getting the monthly summaries is equally easy as getting the daily summaries. And you notice now there's 3,700 rows of data. Each one is a month. You have an incredibly powerful system here for getting monthly summaries or 10-day summaries or annual summaries. We tend to use the monthly and the annual quite a lot. So, and you can do it for rainfall, for temperatures, for lots of other elements, if you like. It's all just the same. You have an incredibly powerful summary system. And one of the things that gives it its power is the facilities for coping with missing values. Now, 2 things to report at the end. Why are these so important just now? Well, I'm one of the standard products I would like you to be producing is the climate normals. And we have prepared some videos on how to produce them. And we think we can produce them with R-Instat very nicely. And you could, in 2022, be producing all the climate normals in a highly professional way. Now, why is that so exciting, more exciting than it has been for a long time? The answer is that the climate normals are the 30-year period where you start when the year starts with a 1. So the most recent climate normals are 1991 to 2020, that 30 years. And you seem to have the data computerized for a lot of your stations up to 2020. But what's so exciting about it is that WMO recognizes the what they call the, I think it's the standard normals, which are the most recent 30 years, which is 91 to 2020, and the reference normals. And the reference normals stay fixed at 1961 to 1990. Aha. For the first time now, the reference normals and the standard normals do not overlap. I repeat, now the reference normals, 1961 to 1990, and the standard normals, 91 to 2020, do not overlap.
Roger, are you showing something on the screen?
No, I'm not
Okay.
doing this. I'm just explaining it.
All right.
And the reason that is and there's a good guide from WMO on the climate normals. So the fact they don't overlap, and we have videos, and there's a guide, means that you could produce the climate normals for the reference period, which you maybe have done already, and for the new period. And now you have a wonderful way of looking at climate change, because you compare 61 to 90 with 91 to 2020. There's lots of MSc projects and all sorts of things doing that for a variety of statistics. And we've written the videos, WMO has the guide, and you'll need to use, the main dialogue you will be using is this climatic summaries dialogue initially, and then the other summary dialogue a little bit later on, as we explain. So the climate normals are there sitting for you, ready to produce, but spend time doing it, get some at least MSc projects out of this, or maybe even more. And that's the sort of thing I would like to see, and WMO would be extremely happy. Remember, it took till 2013 for the US to produce the normals for the last 10-year periods. So you've got a year. Let's produce them by this time next year in a very exciting way and do some comparisons. That's an interesting standard product, quite formidable to produce for lots of stations. If you have the stations from 61 to, you've got 60 years, then you've got wonderful opportunities now for a really important standard product. So that's my first point. My second point is this afternoon, Danny will discuss with you how to produce the world weather records. And the world weather records are something that WMO would like you to produce, but very few countries do it. We think, and they've asked us to make it really simple. And if you go to climatic file, export to world weather records, this is what Danny is going to show you this afternoon. To be able to do that is a very nice product that WMO would be very happy. Therefore, they'll give you support. And this links with your aims to get products. And export to world weather records needs you to supply two things. It needs you to supply the monthly summaries. Here they are, for rainfall and temperature. And it needs you to supply the station file with the coordinates of the stations as well. So once you have those two things, Danny will demonstrate how now you can produce the world weather records for WMO in a way that is so easy you wouldn't believe. And that's where we want to get to in this day of standard products. And also a day which I hope leads you in to a discussion of what you might be asking for after this workshop finishes, some help you need. I've finished and ready for any comments or questions, but particularly I think the discussion might be better after people have practiced with their own data doing what I've just been demonstrating.
Yeah, so there's a quick comment before.
The rain per day, when we were calculating the rain per day, I was wondering why the total, so the sum, was not divided by the number of days in the year, but it was rather divided by the number of rainy days.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So you're welcome to divide. You can do either. You can divide by the number of days or by the number of rainy days, whichever you find is more useful. I think as there's lots of zeros, finding the mean rain per day, I find very confusing. So I usually want to say, how many days have rain? And then how much rain is there on a rainy day? So, and this is general when there are zeros in the data, I want to separate out the zeros and say, how often is it zero? And that's, or non-zero, which is the number of rainy days. And then I'm interested in the mean rain per rainy day. I know the rain on a dry day is zero. So I like that, but there's nothing wrong with having the mean rain per day. Both of them are useful. I find in general, as a statistician, when I have a lot of zeros in my data, I want to separate out the zeros first and then say how much, roughly what's happening to the non-zeros. Let me give you another example. Very different subject. I want you to look around at your class and you see maybe 20 people. And I want to know how many cattle you have on your farm. So I go around and I find that 15 people have 0 cattle because they don't have a farm or they don't have cattle on it. So there's 15 zeros in the data, and the people who have cattle have 3, 7, 10, etc. Now, I can take the total number of cattle and divide by 20 and say that's the average number of cattle per participant, which is taking everything together like you've suggested. Or I can say only 5 people, so 3/4 of people don't have cattle. That's the dry days. Among the people that have cattle, the mean number of cows that they have is 5. So I'm taking the mean just of the 5 people that have cattle. Now maybe it's 8. I've got 8 is the mean of the 5 people that have cattle. That's the mean number of cows. But there are 3/4 of the people that didn't have cattle. So that means that overall the mean is 2 per person. But to me, that's hiding the zeros. I prefer to look at the zeros separately and then say what's happening with the non-zeros. So, but it's preference. Good question.
That means it depends on the sample size you are looking at.
No,
Yeah.
it depends how you're coping with the zeros.
Oh, okay.
Do you treat the zeros separately or do you just include them?
Okay.
And not, it's sort of practical statistics. Neither is right or wrong. They're answering different questions. Okay.
Yes, and the second thing, at a point I saw the Pixar plot that you had, where
Yes.
we had a percentile of 60, the percentiles, the 67 and 33%. Did you choose that, or was it default, or you determine whatever value you want?
Another good question. And I would like in the future version of R-Instat to allow the user to choose the percentiles. But as the default, we chose 1/3 and 2/3, namely 33 and 66%, because that's the terciles that people seem to use when they're presenting the seasonal forecast. So we wanted to fit in with that as the default. But currently in R-Instat, those are the only things we can have. And I'm very keen that we extend it so that actually, I'll show you with the dialogue. What I would like There's the rainfall graph and the PICSA options. I would like not to add tercile lines, but to add, and the default, I'd like to have this where I could choose. And you could choose a third or a quarter or a fifth or a tenth. And so I would like to have this as something I could choose, not fixed on terciles. But initially we wanted terciles to fit in with the seasonal forecast. When we have the climate normals, they use quintiles. So they use 20%, 40, 60, 80. And I wouldn't mind that as well. So, so there's lots of flexibility. Currently, we don't have it. It's one of the areas I like flexibility here so the user can see what they would prefer. But currently, we only have terciles, and I'm a little disappointed with that. So it's a very good point you raise. Any? Okay.
Any other comment? You have? I think that should be it.
Yeah.
We are going to practice,
Yeah.
and try to make some of the climate normals.
Getting to the climate normals will be formidable, but at least getting to some yearly summaries and some monthly summaries. Then the yearly summaries, they plot in a graph. The monthly summaries, they are ready for the world weather records that Dan is going to introduce this afternoon.
Okay.
So that would be a useful task for today. And if they've got any more time, they could be looking at some of the resources on the Moodle site where we discuss how to go towards having started with these monthly summaries, how that's the first step in producing the climate normals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Roger.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, Roger, before you go, can you say something about why we use 30 years? I mean, if we have more than 30 years, for example, why can't we use 50 years to produce the normals, the climate normal?
Okay, a very good point. Thank you. WMO seems to say that you can do more things when you've got more than 30 years. And I'm using 30 years for the normals just because WMO has suggested those normals are based on a 30-year period. However, when we do PICSA or many products and people say, how many years of data would you like to use? Then particularly for rainfall, I say, how many years have you got? And I would like to use the whole record. So to my mind, the longer, the better. So I'm keen that we summarize the whole record, not restrict ourselves to 30 years, especially for rainfall, because the rainfall is so variable. So I want a very long period. And then for temperatures, I want longer than 30 years because I'm looking for trends. And the longer the period. So I would like the general analysis to use the full record that you've got. And countries, both your countries, are very blessed with some stations with very long records. So I'm really keen that you exploit the length of your records. When it comes to the climate normals, WMO seems to have fixed on 30 years, and so I'm willing to stick with them just because that's what WMO has said. But when people come to you, encourage them to use the whole record because it gives so much more information. Don't restrict them to a few years. Amsale, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. No, that's fine. I mean, if there was any background for the WMO to recommend 30 years, why they say it's enough, or if we don't have 30 years and that's what we have, I mean, why they say it, if there's any background for choosing the 30 years.
The 30 years seems to have got some historical background that people say, you really need 30 years, etc. I think that's in the past. So one of the reasons for 30 years now is that that seems to be the period, if you've got them for the right years for the climate normals. But I'm now much keener that we use all the records we've got. And that's particularly the case. You know, people then say, I've only got 4 years. What can I do? Well, you will see tomorrow that what I'm very keen is that we start doing, and I think quite a lot of your work you're proposing for the 2 years of support is that when you've got short records, could we use the satellite or the reanalysis to make them longer? And so I think there's tremendous scope for now making better use of the short records than we've ever done before. So if you've got long records, you are very blessed. Please use the whole record. If you've got short records, please get ready to see how could I extend the length of those records by using supplementary data. And the reason that is please remember, if you've got a 4-year record and you think, oh, it's only 4 years, then especially if it's manual, that is 1,300 days when people have been collecting data. And gosh, you'd think you could do something with 1,300 days. And, you know, especially as we've now got satellite and reanalysis data. So, you know, sort out your data, whether it's short or long, whether there's gaps or not gaps, because I think we can merge data quite well and make really good value, even of short records. So don't worry if it's short, we can think of things to do. And if it's long, feel blessed. But
Yeah.
All right.
Amsale, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roger.
Okay, away you go on your
That-
practical work. And I look
there's one
forward to
last
catching
comment.
up tomorrow.
There's one last comment. I don't know if you really have to go, then that's fine. I can try to take it back.
No, I'm still fine for a bit.
Yes. Or
Yeah, so as a follow-up to the normal and how to accept or choose your station or data set to be able to compute that normal. So in the case where you are going to do merging in terms of your missing values, to what percentage the required standard to have before you go on for that merging? Because we need to get like 30 years to compute our normal, and then most of the stations have missing data in there, which will not give you up to that 30 years, but you want to do merging. What percentage of data availability is required to do that?
Very good questions. And let me go back to the dialogue. And WMO, I think their guide is very good on this. And there's 2 levels of missing that they recommend. Remember, they are doing they will be using this dialogue on a monthly basis. So they say for some countries, they want to have this. I think, I may be slightly wrong, but I'm roughly right. We had to do this specially for WMO, and you will have to decide. They said, when you're getting your monthly summaries for rainfall, they don't want missing. For temperatures, where you're getting an average, they would be happy with up to 10 missing days in the month, as long as not more than 4 are consecutive days. And this is some of the work we had to do to allow that condition. So that's what they said. Now, that gives you the monthly values. The next step is to get, then you've got 30 of those. And then the next step is how many, sometimes you'll have a few missing years, you've got gaps. And they then have rules. I think it's something like, as long as you've got 27 years out of the 30, they're happy for you to use those. So they have rules both for getting the monthly summaries and then for averaging the monthly summaries to get the annual summaries, which is what they recommend. So it's very clearly explained in the guide. And I think you have a lot of stations that will fit in with that. The other possibility is, of course, that you can try and infill some of the data to estimate it. We find, and that's where I'm excited by the potential of the satellite and the reanalysis to be contributing to the infilling. And that's where we want to discuss it. But I have to say that the most difficult element is rainfall, because the satellites don't measure rainfall. They only measure clouds. So it's very difficult to infill the rainfall well. A lot of people are doing it badly, but doing it well is quite difficult. And I'm keen that before you infill with satellite or reanalysis, you actually check very carefully that it's going well. And we will be discussing that tomorrow, because in the climatic, we have a very comprehensive compare where you can compare the station data with the satellite or the reanalysis data. So we would like you to be very cautious before rushing and infilling. We're very conscious that there are some projects that do that, and I'm very keen that research on how well it's being done takes place in Africa, which is a major reason that we have produced this. I don't like all the research on the missing values to be done in America, let's say in IRI. And I'm very happy that they do that work, and you should be very happy too. But you should not be happy that it's all happening there. You should want some of it to happen in Ghana and Gambia to confirm that you're happy with the results. I don't know if that is a good answer to your question.
Yes, I think that satisfies that.
Good. I remember, I can't see any of you. We're just working on speech. So I hope you're going to enjoy the practical work. I hope you might even have time to reflect on what's happening to you or what you would like to happen to your services in the future, if people are generous to you, and what you can do yourselves. And I'm very much looking forward to catching up with you tomorrow morning. And meanwhile, I think you, as well as your practical work, you'll be very impressed with Danny and his work on the World Weather Records. Oh, that's very nice. I like seeing your place.
If you're impressed with them.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Is what we've done on World Weather Records in R-Instat. So the World Weather Records is something maybe you already know about. It's a database of historical monthly data, which is an initiative from WMO, and the database is now organized by NOAA, I think. So I think it's been around a little while, and there's a WMO guide on guidelines on how to do these submissions. And as part of work we did for WMO, they want to encourage countries to be submitting this data to this database, so that there's a sort of large database of this historical monthly records from a number of countries. And one of the limitations to that they found was that there's a very specific format that the data needs to be submitted in. And it's not necessarily very complicated, but it is something that might be time consuming to prepare text files or an Excel file using a very specific format. And it could potentially involve a lot of manual work. So what WMO asked us to do as part of some of our work on R-Instat to sort of align R-Instat to more WMO guidelines was to make a special dialogue to export data exactly in the format so that it could be uploaded and sent to the World Weather Records, and then the countries could be able to use this as one option for doing World Weather Records. Maybe there are other options as well. This is where it is. I'm going to do a demonstration, but it's on the climatic menu. It's on file because what it's doing is just outputting files, text files, and this is item export to World Weather Records. So the idea is that we're following the format of the guidelines from WMO so that you have the format exactly as you need it. So there are up to 7 different monthly summaries that can be submitted as part of World Weather Records. And so here you see the dialogue on the right-hand side, which has the elements that you can fill in. You don't need to have all of the elements. You can submit just one or a number of them if you want to. So, and then there's other information to fill in as well. So that's all I wanted to say on the slides. And then I wanted to also just show you, this is the actual guide from WMO. And I think it was a bit in here in the sort of background of this that they mentioned that this is something that more recently there's been a sort of decline in station coverage, and they're now emphasizing the importance of updating World Weather Record submissions going back to previous years, and then trying to make this something that could be done annually by countries. And so what we would like to do is try to make that easier for countries to use. Okay, so I've got an example ready to show you, so I can show you how to do this in R-Instat. Roger tells me that you have been working on kind of preparing this kind of data, and he was discussing climate normals and things with you this morning. So I hope you sort of have monthly data that you could also be trying this out yourselves on your own data after I've done a demonstration. But I'm going to do a demonstration with some different data, and you might want to just take notes of this, or have someone take notes, or you have the recordings as well, so that then this is something that you can try yourselves on your own data afterwards. So I have data that I've already imported into R-Instat. This is data from Namibia that we used in a workshop with them. I have 4 sheets of data. So the first sheet is just the sheet of elements, which I don't need. So just the description of the elements of the data set. This second sheet should look familiar in the sort of normal format. This is the daily data. And you see it has, we have precipitation, maximum, minimum, and mean temperature. I have a station information file, station metadata file, with various informations about the station. As you can see here. And then I have the data that I've produced in R-Instat, which is summary data, monthly summaries, which is what I'm going to need to export to World Weather Records. So this is now data for each month, and I have the mean of the temperatures, of the 3 temperatures, so mean maximum, mean of Tmax, mean of Tmin, and mean of the mean temperature, and then the total precipitation. And I have this for each of the 4 stations. So the sheets that I'm going to need for the World Weather Records is this monthly data, and I need the station information, because this station information needs to be submitted as part of the World Weather Records submission. And what we need in the station information, not all of this is needed. You need the station name, and here you can see the station names, which maybe could be tidied up a little bit, but that's okay. You need the WMO ID of the station, and I believe this has to be 5 characters long. So there's a station ID here, but there's also a WMO ID. You need the latitude and the longitude of the station. And there are other optional things. Elevation is optional. And another column that you need, which you probably might not have in the data, is the country. So in the submission, you include the country, which is probably not a column that you might have in the metadata, because all your data is just from the same country. But this is a column that I added. So I think what I'll do is just show you how to add this column in case you don't have it in your data. So yeah, and I just also to point out, you might notice this looks kind of familiar. The format of these different sheets is because this is data that came directly imported from Climsoft. So well, these first 3 sheets came directly from Climsoft, and then this monthly summaries one was calculated. So I'm going to just delete this country sheet, country column, and I'm going to show you how to calculate it again. So here I've just got 4 stations, and they're all from the same place. So the column that has the country in, which I need for the dialogue, I just want it to be repeated the same value 4 times because it's just Namibia, or in your case, it's going to be Ghana. So the easiest way to do that is in the prepare menu, we have the calculator, and the calculator is just a way of writing your own expression. Because I want a text, I need to use quotes, and then I just put my text into quotes, and I only need it once. If I put it in once, it means it will be repeated for the whole column. And I can save the results, and I'm going to call that country. I can position it where I like, but I'll just click OK, and it will be added as a column at the end of the sheet. Okay, so that's a step that you may need to do as part of preparing your station data. But otherwise, you should have pretty much everything you need. So I'm going to go to the monthly data. And I'm going to go to climatic and file. And this last option, export to world weather records. Okay, so I have the dialogue with various things to fill in. I need to fill in a station identifier, and I can choose what that could be. It could be the station name, or it could be the WMO number. So I have the station name in I want to select the monthly data to start with. So this is the actual data that I'll be preparing. So I put the station name here. I have the year, I have the month, and then there are 7 different elements that I could fill in. I don't have anything on pressure. I do have mean daily air temperature, which is mean of T mean, which you may or may not have. I do have total precipitation, which is this one, sum of precip. Mean daily maximum air temperature is mean of T max. Mean daily min of air temperature is mean of T min. And I don't have relative humidity, so I can leave that blank. Am I okay so far? Is everyone
Yes,
with me? Yep. Good. So I filled in everything I need to on this dialogue, but I need to fill in the station metadata from this button as well. So this opens the sub dialogue for the station metadata. And so here I need to change this to be the station metadata file, which is stations info for me. And here's the information that I fill in. So I need the station name, I need the WMO number, and there are restrictions on this. I believe this has to be at 5 digits, which is comes from the WMO guidelines. I need the country column, this is why I made that column called country. So in theory, you could have data from different countries if you wanted, but I guess this would just be a single value for most times. I need the latitude, I need longitude, and then these others are optional. So I don't need these if I don't have them, but I do have the elevation, which is the station height. I don't have barometer height, and I don't have the YGOS station identifier. That's another kind of identifier. So that's fine. If I had missed anything important, when I click return, it would tell me that I'm missing something that I need, and I won't be able to click OK. But if I return now, you'll notice that OK is enabled, which means now I have filled in everything I need. in the dialog. The final thing is that I want to say where I'm going to save these files to. So what it's going to do is it's going to write one text file for each station. So for the world weather records, you produce one file per station. You can produce all the files for each station in one go, but that's where it's good to specify a folder. So if you click browse, you get an option to choose folder, and I'm going to just make in my documents. You can choose an existing folder, or I'm going to make a new folder called Namibia World Weather Records. It's probably simple to have a special folder for these because it's going to make multiple files. Okay, and now it's showing me that that's where that's going. Then I just click OK. And I don't see much here apart from the code and the output, and it's told me that 4 files were created at this location. So if I now see what that actually did, go to my folder. This is the folder that I created. And you can see it's created 4 text files, 1 for each station, with the name of the station and a sort of date timestamp. So if I just open one of these, and now you see that this is the file for this station. The header information here, this is where the metadata is used. And then you can see the latitude and longitude format is different to how I entered it. That's the format that is needed. And then it has these monthly summaries presented in this different format. And this is what the dialog is doing, to format it like this. And so this has all of the years that I entered. So I have the air temperature, mean, total rainfall, mean maximum and mean minimum temperature here. And if I go to any of the other files, it should look kind of similar with a different header information and different data, only for the years where there is data. So this, you could do this for any number of stations. This one, there wasn't much data or temperature. So the idea is that we're trying to make these files should basically be ready to, they could now be submitted to WMO. And we're trying to make this as simple as we can, and also trying to make it possible to do it with multiple stations in one go. So instead of needing to do this one at a time, you can do it for as many stations as you like together, as long as you have all the data together in one file. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to show. I think this is yeah, something we're keen to understand if this is something that's useful, if this is something you're already doing and you already have ways of doing this, or whether this could be something where you make use of R-Instat for this. I think the first time doing it might be doing it backwards for multiple stations might take time, but then doing it on an annual basis can become a more routine thing. And something Roger mentioned to me this morning was the discussions you're having or going to have this week about plans going forward for Ghana and Gambia Met services and activities, and whether something like this may be something that's one kind of deliverable that you think about for projects going forward, and it's obviously something of interest to WMO and others that could be being done and could be something where you make use of R-Instat. Yeah, so I'll stop there, but I'm keen to get to hear your thoughts about this. Is this something that's useful, and yeah, is this something that you might use, and what do you think about this? So Francis, back to you to yeah, have a bit of discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. Do we have any reactions, comments? Okay, please. Jose. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Your panel output.
Can you, sorry, get a bit closer to the microphone?
Hello, can you hear me
Hi.
now?
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Yeah, please, the final output. Can you set it in such a way that they will all be in this, the same decimal? Because some were in like an integer and others were in decimals.
Yeah, so this this is the requirement in the document. So you can see here, so mean daily air temperature, precision to 10th of a, this is the format from the document. So
Can it be possible that the whole numbers can be put in the decimal of 1, that is 0, like 24.0, there will be uniform output.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think, yeah, this is obviously, yeah, this is definitely something we could have. I think I might need to check the guidelines to see whether it should have those point zeros or whether it's supposed to be like that for this format. But yeah, thanks. This might be something we might want to just make a small adjustment on to make sure the integers have those point zeros as well if they need them.
Yes. Use that.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for your presentation. I'd like to know what's the difference between this platform and then the World Weather Information Service platform. Because earlier we've also sent an information like this to that same platform. So what's the difference between the two?
What was the other one you mentioned? World
Weather Information Service.
I'm not sure exactly if they are the same. I know that this is the World Weather Records is basically this WMO initiative from this guide.
Because that one is also the WMO initiative.
Sorry?
That one is also from the WMO. And we the monthly information, as you just showed, was prepared, and then for both rainfall, then the maximum and then the minimum temperature.
Yeah, so I think this one is not like as regular as you would just send in to WMO on like just every month. So this has slightly more possible elements. So there's 7 here, and I think this is something that the suggestion is that this is something that could be done annually and not every month. So yeah, it's to have these kind of every 10 years to have these data sets for different 10-year periods. So I think you can also submit previously going back, so they have beginning in 1920s. But I think the idea of this is a slightly different database. And the sort of thing that they're trying to get is to have annual submissions to this. So exactly how that's used, comparing to different submissions to WMO, I'm not 100% sure. And maybe good to, yeah, we could follow up with this with some of our WMO contacts, but I'm sure you have some as well. So yeah, if there's something that we could help understand in some differences, then yeah, then happy to do that. But yeah, as I understand, this is something that's less regular and a more something to be done on an annual basis with maybe slightly different elements.
Hi, Danny.
Yeah.
Yes. So
But Maureen, were you saying that the format, the output format is similar to something you've been doing in the same way? To know
That one was more climatological, like 30 years, it's 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. It's every 10 years.
Okay, so because can you show me the output again?
Yeah.
So I think the idea is if it is similar to what this output is similar, then this could be a facility that could be used for world weather records and whatever that is as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if there are differences, like important differences in the format, and that's also something that you're submitting regularly, and you found that this is a useful process, then there's no reason why we couldn't have, another dialogue or an option on the dialogue to sort of say, this is for world weather records, and this is for a slightly different submission in a slightly different format, so that we could output different formats. So yeah, really keen if there are other sort of regular operations that you have where some kind of automated output like this would be useful, if it's not for world weather records, but for something else, that's something that we could possibly then add into R-Instat that GMet could be making use of.
Yeah.
So yeah, and all we'd need is just some information about that format, some links or some example files, so that we can make sure to get the formats right. That's how we did this for WMO, as they asked us to do this one. But there are others, and yeah, very keen to make this as useful for other operations as well.
Yeah, Danny, I think for me it's more of like a good tool for it to be implemented, because instead of maybe going through those tedious moments of generating those, now this is very easy and quick enough. What we can do is maybe use this same tool to generate a similar thing that we are talking about, and then compare the results. If it's okay, then we are cool to go. And then I just wanted to find out the areas where we had missing values. It's, I don't know, in case maybe we have filling up with satellite data before maybe getting the final output, is it allowed?
Yeah, I think it's something I checked with WMO and the NOAA team. I'm not sure if it's in the guideline document, but I asked them about missing values because it doesn't really say too much on missing values. And basically the response I got was that it's the organization's decision on how they treat missing values. So they would sort of, the agency can use whatever rules that it feels are appropriate for its data. So if you feel that infilling the data to not have missing values is the most appropriate, then I think, from my understanding, that's fine. And I think the only thing that I think you also send with this submission, a sort of metadata file, which is just like a description file. And I think the idea is that in that file is where you say a little bit about the data processing. And so that's where you could say, we infilled missing values using this and this. So yeah, I think it's down to you to make those decisions.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Danny. Any other comments?
If this isn't something that GMet or Gambia are sort of already submitting, I know it's fairly new or fairly uncommon, and that's where we've been asked to kind of make it easier. Then this might be something as part of your discussions about long-term plans and things like this, or if you're looking for other sources of funding and things to to be on for your sort of 2-year plans, that this could be something where preparing submissions for WMO and related submissions could be part of those operations which you're maybe streamlining or improving as part of this plan. So just something that might be useful to feed into your discussions later today and later in the week.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. I think, yeah.
Good. So yeah, I hope you'll get a chance to sort of try this yourself with your own data. One thing I'm not sure of, which you might want to try and see if you break it or not break it, is I can't quite remember what happens if, so your station file may have more stations here than you have in your actual data, for example, right? If you might have metadata for hundreds of stations, but you just have data for 10 stations. I can't remember whether that's fine for this export or whether you may need to like do a filter on this file before to get down to the actual stations you have. So yeah, that's just something to in case you get a problem, that might be, it might be that you need to filter this file.
Yeah, that would be good. I think they have subsets, data sets, so that should be fine. It's just about four per group. So
yeah, but I can't actually remember whether it does this, whether that's a problem or not. So you may not need to do the subsetting, but it might be worth trying with and without. Yeah, and yeah, sometimes if you may have an error sometimes with this, it may be to do with things like the station name. Sometimes if it's a factor and it has different, and it's a factor here, but it has different levels or in a different order, it may have a problem sort of merging these two together in the process. And so that's where sometimes I just make the station name into a character to simplify that. So that's just another, potential thing.
Okay, so both files need to have station as character, or they should.
I think it not always, but it might be something that's a problem, especially if you have different order of station names or more different station names in different files. So the safe bet is to make it character, but yeah. On the Moodle site as well. So if you have questions or things, then I'm available there as well.
Okay, great, man. Thanks.
Okay.
Or is it easier for you to just put it on the day 3?
Yeah, sure.
So that everybody could have access to it.
Yeah. I will. Yeah, I would.
There
just
was a question
delete.
on the WMO ID. Do you guys know how you get that? WMO ID. Yeah. For your station. WMO ID. WMO ID. Yeah.
Yeah, WMO number. There should be
for your station.
In the guide, it says, I'll put the guide up as well. So in the guide, it says it's 5 digits with leading 0 if applicable. So if you had 4 digits, you
should this be something they know, or they just put it?
It should be like the WMO, the official WMO identifier for the station, the WMO number for the station. So it should be the number that's registered with WMO for the station.
They do have it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There might be something I need to add to the file, but yeah.
All right. Thanks, man. So we try it and then get back.
Okay, good. Yeah, enjoy the rest of the session.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.